Hi, I'm Roger Mader with Ampersand. I want to talk to you about design methods, and in particular, using a simplified method we've designed at Ampersand called designing in 4D. The 4Ds represent simply 4 phases that aren't often all covered by traditional design thinking methods. First, we define the challenge. Whoever your business sponsor is has an objective they're trying to achieve. This is the one time where you're looking internally at the organization's goals to say, what is the definition of the business challenge? Are we supposed to grow by $500 million? Are we supposed to acquire X number of new population members? Are we meant to be relevant to a new population group? Figure out what that is and put some hard numbers on it. Second, you're going to discover the needs of your target audience in context. That means you're going to go live with them, walk around in their shoes, and understand through ethnographic research what the real needs are that are being underserved. You're going to design and iterate alternate solutions. This is now traditional design methods where you're creating lightweight prototypes, testing them very quickly. Before you begin to really deeply invest in trying to develop any solution, you're testing multiple possibilities to find the best attributes. And then finally, you're going to deploy this to make an impact in the marketplace. What is it that gives you the greatest probability of scale and impact? I want to use a case story from a design hero of mine. This is Wendy Perchik. Wendy is the Chief Strategy Officer and Innovation Officer for Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, the research center in New York City. It is both a hospital and a research center that serves patients every day. And one of the things that's important to note is that Wendy was trained as a nurse and in oncology, and also happens to be a breast cancer survivor herself. So it's very important to understand that she comes to this challenge with a deep degree of empathy for her customer, if you will. This is the entrance, Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, where Wendy would enter every day, as well as patients. And of course, when you come through those doors, you've run into, even on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, at such an expensive and exclusive facility, you still find a waiting room full of patients. And one day as Wendy was coming in, she was approached by a woman who was one of these waiting in the waiting room. She was wearing a bandana on her head, an obvious indication of somebody who was going through chemotherapy. She said, "I'm sorry, are you Wendy Perchik?" Wendy said yes. And the woman said, with some emotion rising in her voice, "I want to thank you so much for the quality of care I've received at Memorial Sloan Kettering, but I want you to know I will never forgive you for the few days I have left on this planet that I have to spend in this waiting room rather than at home with my family." And Wendy and she spontaneously wept in each other's arms. Wendy concluded that I need to solve this problem. It's an endemic problem. It's been a problem forever because the healthcare system has optimized around the singular unit of value, which is the time of the physician. The specialist's time is what matters, not the patient's. From the organization of the hospital, that's how they've always viewed it. And why would it ever be different when the hospital is run by medical physicians? So Wendy made it her mission to try and transform this issue of wait time for patients. Using the 4D method, let's go through step by step how she really reimagined the experience for particularly chemo patients. First, she'd gone through the challenge of defining what the needs were by discovering needs from the patient and the wait times that they endured. And what she found was the critical factor mattering most to these patients is time. How can I spare them the time that they're wasting sitting and waiting for medical care? She went to the board, the medical board, in order to define what their requirements were for the hospital and their standards of care. And she buried them in data because they said, how can we possibly change this? We can't have more doctors. We don't have more space. That's going to continue to be the limiting measure. And she said, I want you to give me permission to try and find a way to optimize for the patient without creating greater conflict for the doctors, without creating scheduling hassles, et cetera. And they said, you have this budget and this period of time to come back to us and tell us if it's possible, but we don't see how you could do it. So then she went on a deep discovery exercise to try and find alternative ways to reduce wait times. And what she found was one area of the medical profession that she felt was not limited by access to the doctor, and it was the chemotherapy. It was any time that you're going into a facility where it's already set up and prepared for you, where the prescription is already known and medical intervention is very limited, a nurse practitioner, for example. So she started to say, where could we find more space if we can't find more doctors? And she went across the bridge to Brooklyn, to an area that looked more like this at the time, and found what had been a 7-Eleven, I think it was a convenience store, that was now open for rent. And she was able to very inexpensively repurpose this at surgical grade in order for them to create what, if you could see on the door, is the Brooklyn Infusion Center. She ultimately built what became a local art gallery in the waiting room by designing all of the features that patients demonstrated they needed. For example, they had privacy with something better than a plastic shower curtain around them. And in this case, when she first put up solid barriers, she found from patients that they felt like they were too isolated. It was too claustrophobic. They wanted to be able to see the life outside the door, but they also wanted a sense of privacy. And so they built these etched glass doors. They put a sofa on the side because what they found was the patient isn't coming alone. The patient is a mother with children who are having to do homework. So there's a desk on the right, or take a nap on the left, or it's an older person who's got a whole family taking care of them. And they also put entertainment with the equivalent of a large iPad bolted right into the chair, where you had easy selection with the touch of a button. So the 20 minutes that you were spent in what is a relatively torturous exercise of having poison infused into your body is a little less onerous. She also did things that were real breakthroughs. The Food and Drug Administration in the United States prohibits you from having live plants in areas where the skin barrier is penetrated. But there are plenty of hypoallergenic plants that could be considered, especially when you know that patients tend to rehabilitate more rapidly when they have access to nature. And in the center of New York City, that's hard to come by. So she introduced plants that she got approved by the FDA, purposely drove them through. You can imagine that one of the challenges for any great innovation leader is perseverance. She ran through walls just to put plants in the assembly area. She also, as you can see from this water feature, created the sound of ambient water noise, like a waterfall. So she was covering some of the, what would sound like institutional sounds of trolleys and stuff rolling around and people walking and talking, with sounds of nature as well. Ultimately, the wait time for the patient was 0. All it took was the time it required you to sign your name upon entry. Because, of course, they could schedule the rooms in advance. They could book the medications for you. They knew exactly what you required. They knew the duration. They knew the volumes, etc. Everything was set, ready, and waiting for you, just like rapidly turning over a hotel room or any other rented space. What Wendy did was a remarkable exercise in proving that it was possible to eliminate wait times. And that's the goal, for her to be able to prove that we can serve patients as our priority, as the hospital says they do, not with the doctors as the priority. In summary, she went to the board and defined the challenge. We're going to cut the wait times, we're going to lower the cost, lower the burden, we're going to have better patient care with better caregiver experience and higher patient ratings. Those are really amazing demands. We're going to have a better service experience for our patients, we're going to have better scores for the hospital, we're going to have a better caregiver experience as well. We're going to, as a result, cut the wait times, etc., as one component of a project charter. This is a one-pager that becomes the definition of the challenge. Serve our patients as a priority by achieving these results under these conditions. This is the status quo that she's examining. She set milestones of deadline dates and who was going to be approval for this, and in one piece of paper agreed with the executive committee, this is our goal. In order to make all of this happen, you, in your work, will have to translate for your target audience some of the answers to these questions. In order for them to understand the transformation that's taking place, you need to reveal the pain that's in plain sight. Help them see it too. That might require you to bring executives along to observe what customers or patients are experiencing. This might require you to use video in order to bring the voice of the customer into the executive boardroom. Remember that you're going to have to challenge convention. The doctors said it wasn't possible. When Wendy first brought to them the premise that they were going to relocate to Brooklyn for this, they said, absolutely not. Our doctors can't go to Brooklyn. I mean, that's too far. It's going to take up too much doctor time. That's when Wendy hit them with the data that said, I've gone through 6 months of patient chemotherapy. We have had, you know how many doctor visits we've had with the patients during that time? 0. Because it's not required of the doctor and it's not expected by the patient. They have all the medical intervention and care that they need. She also had to confront the issue that they said, look, we're on the Upper East Side of New York City. No one's going to want to go to gritty Brooklyn. Wendy handed them the survey results that said they'd all prefer to go to Brooklyn because there's no good way to get to the Upper East Side of Manhattan. The subways don't get here. You have to take 3 buses and a helicopter to get there. Versus in Brooklyn, it's the center hub for most of the transit. So it was much easier for most of their patient body to get to that location. It's also closer to the airports. So by challenging convention, she was challenging assumptions that had been long held and never challenged previously. What you have to do is use facts as greater than assumptions. And bringing the data was what made all the difference in her original pitch to the board. Qualify the risk and reward. What are we going to expect to achieve and what's it going to cost us? If you can do that up front, it's much easier than after the fact having to justify the cost of the effort that you're going through. Fight for right, but win for all. Wendy had to say to the executive team, the patient is our first priority. We say it all the time. How are we going to demonstrate that? This exercise will show that we are putting our money and our effort where our mouth is. And she did fight for right and did win for all constituents. Remember, you don't just have a customer, you also have an executive board, you also have medical professionals, you also have a community that you're part of. All of these participants are constituents that you're serving, and you have to measure the impact for all. And remember to do it cheap, fast, and iterate. What that means is don't presume you've got the right answer. The way that you think about doing this is by coming up with multiple solutions quickly without building them out. Just ideas. Draw them on the back of an envelope. Test them with patients, test them with doctors, nurse practitioners, everybody in the supply chain, even the local community, maybe with the transit hub to make sure that your solution before you invest in building it is going to work. Use this rapid iteration model as a way to reveal all of the needs and features that you've got to build before you've invested and have to retrench. And finally, sign off with your sponsor on a clear, agreed project charter. This define phase at the forefront of your exercise is so vital to making sure that you get the support that you need throughout the entire process and you're not being hamstrung along the way by naysayers. You're getting their sign-off up front. Thank you very much. I'm Roger Meddy with Ampersand. I hope that you find it useful to use 4 Ds to craft your next innovation.